Alrighty, welcome back to Shut Up and Ball. I'm Aaron, and of course, I'm joined by Mr. John Harris. John, how was your holiday weekend?
It was all right. My brother-in-law got COVID, so
Oh
then he
no.
and my sister couldn't come down. So we did like a Zoom thing. They'll be here in like a few days once they're like finished quarantining and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of awkward. And then in fantasy football, I was in the playoffs in three of my four leagues, lost in all three. So I mean, it was good to see like family and stuff, but a little bit awkward. And then I lost all my leagues, so that kind of sucked.
Yeah, man. I mean, well, same boat fantasy wise. I was in three of my five. We're both in sleeper, our fan dynasty league. We both. Yeah, you had a real rough go. You're to of all ways to lose because you're Cowboys by point 0.5. Because
They gave up a garbage time touchdown.
hey, listen, Chiefs. My shining hope was the Chiefs skunking the Steelers, and then Big Ben had to have two garbage time touchdowns and some garbage time yards. We'll get over that game too. So, and I'm sure we're not the only ones with bad fantasy luck, but it just sucks. Both of us, like technically the pod together, over 6 on our
It
chances to
was,
get the
of
chance. We
course, though, the
suck, man.
curse had to strike.
And then I had Jonathan Taylor in the league that I was writing, and there's this one pedestrian game. So that sucked. But anyways, we're gonna get into the real games now. We'll get into fantasy stuff later because we're still doing that, even though we are both effectively limited, especially John. But nonetheless, here we go. Start off with the Thursday night game. Definitely a surprise as the Tennessee Titans, they went on to beat the San Francisco 49ers 20-17. All 20 of their points in the second half. John, what were your thoughts in regards to the Thursday night game?
This was a weird one. AJ Brown really just seemed to take over, and honestly, that was kind of their offense. I mean, Tannehill had 209 passing yards, 145 of that was to AJ Brown. So it shows you number one, how good AJ Brown is, but also this is sort of the thing that we've talked about with San Francisco's defense this year is their secondary been the weakness. I mean, they have Fred Warner, they got Nick Bosa, like they have solid guys along the front seven, but the secondary, it's just not as good as it's been in previous years with Sherman moving on and a few different other key pieces being gone. And so, it's a tough loss for San Francisco because this is a game where they win, they're 9-6. All of a sudden, playoffs are feeling pretty good. And now with the loss, I mean, they still have a great chance at 8-7. I don't know their last two games, but I'm sure that they still have a pretty good shot at making it. But this was a tough way to lose for them. And I I don't know if you saw this, but did you see that John Lynch liked the tweet
Yes, that about Jimmy
Garoppolo?
Garoppolo getting him out of town or next year, right?
Yeah,
Basically, yeah.
and he said that he accidentally liked it or something like that, and he didn't
He
mean
even said he
to.
accidentally
And
liked it during mass too. It's like that's not really a that's not a great excuse, and B, if that's true, why are you on your phone? Even I'm not a religious person, but even I know you don't be on your phone during mass. You're just making yourself. I just feel like that's just a lie on a lie. Like you know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah. So I mean, just a tough game overall, and I like I said, I still think they make the playoffs, but the way they lost, Jimmy Garoppolo throwing two picks, the secondary, it's like the obvious issues that we've known are there are the reason that the Titans were able to come out on top in this one. So, not shocking the way that they lost, just because of the holes that got exposed, but um, I don't know with no Derrick Henry, with AJ Brown coming back from injury, it sort of felt like this is a game where the Niners should easily win, despite all their injuries to guys like Elijah Mitchell. I don't know if Fred Warner played in this one. I know he had been previously hurt,
Yeah, he
but
did play. He had 5 tackles and tackle for loss, so
so
he was
so yeah. I
involved.
mean, this feels like a game the Niners should have won, especially if you wanted to punch your way into the playoffs in a very competitive division where you're out of the division title race.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail pretty much right on the head. Jimmy G is he's just an average quarterback. You know what I mean? Don't no offense to him, that's just kind of what he is. I expect to move on from him, especially after John Lynch. You just don't just accidentally like a post. It just it doesn't really happen. I call BS on that. Um, and at Niners are in a tough spot. I believe they don't have their first round pick 'cause they did trade it up. They did trade up for Trey Lance last year, if I remember correctly, right? I think they did.
Yeah, they
So
did.
and we'll see. There's still jury's still not out on him. He still needs more development, but still doesn't look good on the front office because it kind of seemed like a move that they wanted to win this year, and right now they're on the edge. And then especially if they don't get far in the playoffs or don't even make the playoffs this year, don't have your first round pick, and like you mentioned, they have the quarterback spot. Okay, maybe they have some investment there, but need some investment in the secondary, and maybe I'm not sure money wise, and I probably should I'll look into it. Maybe they'll have more money because Jimmy G will be gone because I know he takes a big amount of their cap space. So maybe they can address corner there. But there's not really any corners, at least I'm trying to think of, that are on an expiring deal unless not Byron Jones, Xavier Howard's unhappy again or still unhappy. But I think he got that contract fixed too, if I remember right.
Yeah.
I think they
Yeah,
so,
they restructured it, and I
so
think he got more money.
yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. No, maybe it's Stephon Gilmore if he leaves. I don't know. Nonetheless, though, a lot of question marks in regards to secondary, and we saw that this game with AJ Brown, like you mentioned. I, from what I saw, they didn't really have much success doubling. They didn't try doubling him. Maybe even trying that because really, I mean, who else scares you on that offense? Julio Jones, maybe, but Julio Jones hasn't been the same all year. He's just been banged up. So we'll see what happens with San Fran. I don't think Shanahan and Lynch should necessarily be thrown out, fired. But I think they should definitely be on the hot seat going into next year because this is too talented of a roster, even with some of their losses, to be barely making the playoffs. I know they're in a tough division, but still, it's just we expect more from the 49ers. And then you mentioned the Titans. Just good solid coaching. Their defense is very well versed, and they made some great second half adjustments. One of them just being feed AJ Brown. And just last point, I just think AJ Brown, Deebo Samuel, two guys. I think this game really showed. I think they deserve to be in that. Maybe not necessarily in top five, but they're in that conversation, kind of pushing the envelope. So we'll see what happens with them going forward. But yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of a shocking game. I thought San Fran had control after the first half. They're up 10-0, but then adjustments remain. I think that's one of the great things about the NFL too, is you see the impact of coaching and just better football, where that college, these things really don't happen unless like some tragic things happen. So yeah, great win for Tennessee. They keep a whole stronghold in their division, while, like we mentioned many times before, 49ers seems like every time they get a chance to push, get a gap in the wild card race, they have a tough loss and they're right back in the mix of things. So we'll see how it unfolds for them.
Which, by the way, real quick,
Yeah.
the free agent corners this upcoming offseason include J.C. Jackson. He's the top one,
Okay.
but probably stays because Bill Belichick loves to keep his top corners.
Yeah.
Then Stephon Gilmore, like you said, and then like Carlton Davis is the number 3. So
Carlton Davis might not be bad, but
he's not bad. But like, does Tampa even let him leave?
well, I don't think
after that,
Tampa can pay everybody. They still got to figure out they can keep Chris Godwin too.
yeah.
He
I
got
mean,
tagged.
after that, we're talking like Darius Williams from the Rams, who's he's all right. Like, but
yeah,
nothing that's really
I
jumping
wouldn't
off the
say you
board.
want him as your number one corner. So yeah, I know
Yeah.
what you mean. So we'll see what happens with them there. But Titans win that Thursday nighter, stay atop of the AFC South. I always forgot their division for a second. But now we go to the games that occurred on the 25th, Saturday, aka Christmas. Going the first one, my Green Bay Packers hung on to beat the Cleveland Browns 24-22. What were your thoughts on this one?
So obviously, because of the way that seeding is working, I'm rooting for Green Bay to lose every week. Like, I need them to get one loss so that Dallas gets the bye week. And so that means I became a Browns fan for a game, and it was exhausting. I feel bad for Browns fans. Like, it's tough being a Cowboys fan because the expectations are always so stupid high just because of the way the fan base is. And we never meet them. But for like the Browns, you're just hoping that they can win a game. And in a game where they, like, honestly, even statistically, they moved the ball better than Green Bay did. Baker Mayfield Mayfield destroyed any chances that they had at winning this game. I don't know if he's still injured. I don't know if there's effects with COVID. I don't know what's going on there. But just simply put, I mean, like the Browns had every opportunity to win this game. He threw 4 interceptions and they lost by 2. And so you have to wonder, why didn't they run the ball more? Nick Chubb only had 17 carries, averaging 7.5 yards per carry. The whole time I was watching this game with my dad, and I was just sitting there wondering, how is this team averaging 8.8 yards per carry as a team? And they are allowing Baker Mayfield to throw 36 times in a close game. It was never out of reach.
Yeah.
To me, it just has. I don't know what was going on. Was Stefanski out of this game? I don't
I
know.
think he was coaching. If I
I
remember, I
know there
saw
was some
his.
game this year that it was COVID. I don't know if it was
It was
this
the game
week.
before this one. I think they were
Okay,
missing.
so then if he was there, I mean, there's really no excuse. Like I don't know what the coaching is doing there when it comes to the play calling. I don't know if Baker is doing when it comes to throwing some of these passes. Like these were bad,
Yeah.
and Green Bay simply never felt worried. They never felt like they had to panic at all. They just played their game. They got the ball, easy field position. They scored touchdowns, and that was the game. Like the Browns easily could have won. Well, I don't want to say easily because obviously maybe Green Bay turns it on more if they are more efficient, with the Browns drives. But like the Browns had opportunities to win this game, and they had the formula to win this game, and it just baffles me that they did not run the ball more.
Yeah, I want to just highlight two of the interceptions. One of them I don't remember exact time, but it was like they were back to they just kind of got on the ball and he threw into double coverage. Like I don't, that's not injury or that's just bad decisions. And then the one at the very end, I think Rasul Douglas was the one that got it. Where if Baker just, and once again, this one may actually be injury. I hope for Baker's sake it is, because he did have Jarvis down the left sideline. It was kind of a blown coverage, but he just left it behind Jarvis and gave Rasul Douglas time to get the pick to end the game. So, yeah, I was, as a Green Bay fan, I'm definitely concerned heading into the playoffs. If it seems like if the offense isn't flowing around Devontae Adams, there isn't much there. Run game has slowly been less and less as the season's gone on. Now I know we've had injuries to offensive line. But yeah, I at least on the bright side that we do have Rodgers and Devontae, but it just feels like kind of like last year going into this playoffs again, where I feel like there's gonna be a game where Devontae's gonna be doubled or just having a tough matchup, and we lose one because our defense is lesser than. I mean, granted, not much talent right now because Jair's still not back, and no Zadarius Smith. Although Rashawn Gary was really good at the beginning of the season, he's starting to kind of fade a little bit. So as a Packer fan, yes, we won this game, but I have concerns going forward. Because I mean, for the Browns to turn the ball over 4 times, we should have beaten the Browns by a lot more, but we couldn't capitalize on that. So that is a concern. But for Cleveland, I mean, we talked. I feel like we talk almost every other week about Baker. They got a tough decision to make. I think they don't have to. Still has one more year left. I think, right?
Yeah, he does.
I mean,
It's
I
his
won't be
fifth year
shocked.
option,
Yeah, I won't
which
be
they've already picked up.
okay. So I won't be shocked if they just ride the 5th-year option, and then if he does well, they'll reward him at the end of it. If not, then he'll walk away and maybe go to another team. But I just like we mentioned the passing game a little bit on Baker, but a little bit on the scheme too. Just not very confident in their passing attack if they have to drop back and pass. And I think when they did, it wasn't great. So we'll see if that's something they can improve on going forward. But yeah, they may need to take the Colts approach where, okay, we're going to run the ball for majority of the game and we'll give Baker about 15 to 20 passes to make something happen. Otherwise, we're going to lean on our guys. So, just a tough loss for the Browns, really. And not a great, I know a win's a win, but not a great win for the Packers because, like I said, concerns going forward that I'm not exactly sure if we can fix overnight. So,
Which, by the way, I do want to highlight that interception, like 2 minutes, it's 2 minutes and 51 seconds in. Or actually, hold on, I don't know the exact time. It was the one like right before halftime by Baker. That one was unacceptable. It wasn't necessarily the throw or the play, but the fact that like right before half, you're gonna give the Packers the ball back where you could like I'm pretty sure they were in field goal range. You could go into the half at worst down by 2 if you missed a field goal. At at best here, you potentially score a touchdown or you get a field goal, something like that. So you're winning at halftime, and Baker throws an interception and allows Rodgers to drive down the field in like a minute and 40 seconds to get a touchdown. Like that one was just, as a veteran quarterback, you need to know that you can't be, making that sort of throw in harm's way when you can get points right before half.
Also, too, I mentioned with San Francisco, like Cleveland, like you could double Devonte Adams too. Like I didn't
Yeah,
see
we
it.
we saw Baltimore do it.
Yeah, Baltimore said that Baltimore's like we're not letting Devonte Adams beat us. And granted, Devonte got his every now and then, but he wasn't roasting them for 100 yards and he had 2 touchdowns or one, I forget. I think he had two. Um, but yeah, it's obvious that when in doubt, Rodgers is going to go to Devontae because he's one receiver he can trust. And yeah, he had 114 yards, 2 touchdowns. So it's kind of obvious where the ball's going in the passing game where Rodgers is going to be looking. So yeah, that's on Cleveland for not being more creative on defense. So we'll see if they can resolve that. But yeah, so in regards to the AFC and NFC playoff race, this next game was a big one. The Indianapolis Colts, they beat the Arizona Cardinals 22-16. Had a few injuries to their O-line early in the game, but they managed to pull through. So, John, what were your thoughts in regards to this game?
Uh, the whole time, all I could sit there and think is, man, the Cardinals, they're doing what they did last year. And it's a tad unfortunate because Kyler both years has gotten hurt towards like the middle / end of the season. And it seems to be a sort, I don't want to call it a trend, but Kyler's a mobile quarterback and he relies a lot, even on just his ability to roll out, keep plays alive. He is shorter. And, I know that draft people love to like destroy quarterbacks who are shorter, but it does matter because if you can't really roll out, then you're having to sit there behind your offensive linemen. You can't necessarily see over them as well. Baker, I think, threw one of his interceptions in a very similar style of that, to where like he didn't roll out. He's also a shorter quarterback and wasn't able to see the defender super well. So when that happens with Kyler, we see the performance dip because he's not be able to move really. So I don't know. I feel like we're starting to see what the Cardinals did last year, and so we're wondering, are they really even a better team than they were last year? I mean, record wise, they'll probably finish better. I can't remember the exact record they had last season, but
I'll pull it up.
so I mean, they're still a playoff team, and the Colts are a great team, so it's not like this is a terrible loss. But you put up 16 points against a Colts team that is, like you said, is got a lot of injuries. I mean, Jonathan Taylor didn't have an amazing game; he still had 100 yards, but like this isn't the Jonathan Taylor domination games, and their offensive linemen are missing. So it just seems like this is a game where you could take advantage of your opportunities and
They
beat
also
a
didn't
beat up
have
team.
Leonard too. He was out to
Yeah,
COVID. He was
yeah.
announced right that morning that he was out for that game too.
And he's arguably their like third most important player on that team behind probably Jonathan Taylor.
Okay, so I have the Cardinals went to 8-8 last season.
So yeah, I mean, they're better than they were last year, but like how much better? It's I mean, I was feeling this way even like towards the beginning of the season, but in the NFC, I've never truly felt like they were necessarily like the team to beat, even though for a long time they had the best record, just because Cliff Kingsbury. It feels like, when the games start to matter more, he's inexperienced. Like, can you really rely on him? And I don't know that we can.
Yeah. And this it was. Geez, I have a concern about their defense too, losing J.J. Watt and they just don't have a lot of great size. And granted, Colts. I think because the Colts lost some of their old linemen, had to pass a little more. The run game wasn't as successful as they wanted it to be. But yeah, going into late January, where you're gonna have to play, my Packers or heck, even your Cowboys or the Bucks, teams that have pretty good old lines and some bruising backs and just bigger lines. I worry about their size, and there's always a philosophy that, or it is true that fast guys can get slower as the game goes on, but big guys don't get smaller. And granted, I know they're already thin at the position with their size to begin with, and obviously, like I said, losing J.J. Watt and a few other pieces really hurt because now really only the main big defensive lineman is going to be Jordan Phillips, and that's only one guy. So yeah, I think that's a concern. And then yeah, like you hinted to, the offense. I mean, we've seen the offense just like last year. Teams kind of starting to figure out their stuff. Granted, I know there's no DeAndre Hopkins, but we've seen other teams throughout the years and even this year just manage to find ways to still be successful offensively without their number one guys. Packers did it to them that Thursday night without Devontae Adams. Still found ways to win the game and score points. We see the Bucks doing it right now. No Godwin, no Mike Evans. So yeah, regardless, good teams figure out good teams and good coaches figure out ways to still manufacture points because they still have a talented team. They saw Christian Kirk. We've seen Rondo Moore at the beginning of the year do things. We haven't seen him really do anything since then. So that's leaves something to be desired. Chase Edmonds, we know he's explosive, but he hasn't seemed to have the opportunities as well. I know Kyler had the big run, but other than that, I'm trying to remember. I don't think there's really any other explosive plays, and that was a read option. It's not like it was a crazy pass design that got someone open. So, yeah, I think Cliff may need to continue to work even harder and just keep reinventing, keep being creative like he did at the beginning of the season. But yeah, for the Colts, it's just they're right now they're stricken with COVID, and we'll see how that affects them going forward. But in regards to this game, the recipe is simple. Just we're gonna put the ball in Jonathan Taylor's hands, and Carson Wentz is good enough that he can make a few plays off schedule if he really needs to win the game. But luckily, he doesn't get too many opportunities to screw it up like we've seen before, where it's all on him. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see going forward as they chase the Titans. They really need the Titans to lose, but they did not. So they're still, I think, technically a game and a half behind them. So in that race. So those are the Saturday/Christmas games. Now we go to the Sunday games, starting with the Falcons beating the Lions 20-16. Any quick thoughts on this game, John?
Battle of the bad teams. Amon-Ra St. Brown killed me in fantasy.
Yeah, he did too
Big,
for me, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, I had him on the starts list, so I expected him to have a good game, but it's just unfortunate that yep, he put up like 28 points or something like that on me, and was a big reason as to why I lost. So don't really have much else to say outside of, it's good to see that Kyle Pitts got back involved because there was sort of a stretch there where he wasn't super involved in the offensive game plan. Other than that, I mean, good win for Atlanta. You did something that the Cardinals couldn't do, and you beat Detroit.
Yeah. I really don't have much else to add analytically. Tough, win by Detroit, but I think we both kind of felt Atlanta just has a little bit more high tier talent, especially in regards to quarterback. Matt Ryan played a solid game, and we saw Kyle Pitts and a few other guys make some plays. So, yeah, not much else to add there. Solid win for the Falcons, 7-8. Maybe they'll be above 500. Lions still stay in that race for the top pick there. But speaking of that top pick, that's where we're gonna go to next, where the Jacksonville Jaguars they keep the top pick because they lose the New York Jets 26-21. Zach Wilson had like a 50-something yard touchdown. He showed off his Jets. No pun intended. But anyways, any quick thoughts in regards to this game?
That run by Zach Wilson was awesome. He really turned it on that play. And I don't know what the defenders were doing. It kind of looked like they just expected him to walk out of bounds, and he just kept going and went all the way to the end zone. So good on him. For the Jags, it's tough that you lose James Robinson. I think he got hurt on like the first drive of the game. And so now you're without him for the rest of the year, which I mean, it's only a few games, but still sucks because it's crazy that he's a second year player, but he's like a veteran on this team just because of how much change and turnover there is over there. But otherwise, I don't really have a whole lot to say. Good to see Michael Carter was back and got really involved. Sadly, I benched him in fantasy for Miles Sanders, who then also got hurt. Another reason why I lost. Very painful week, but great highlight from Zach Wilson on that run.
Yeah, I think it gives Jets fans more to hope for, and I think I mentioned this game too. Like Zach, like I said, Zach's had a few more wow NFL pop plays, and that was one of them. And on the other side, it's hard to give Trevor Lawrence a fair grade just because we all know Jacksonville's just not a great organization. I mean, they already had to fire their first year head coach before the season's over. But not a lot to be left to desire in terms of that offense. Now, once again, Darrell Bevel, not a very creative offensive mind to begin with. He was, out there in Seattle for most of those years where they were just running the ball, throwing slants and goes, and not very creative, anyways. So I hope for their sake, maybe they get a Byron. I already heard there's Byron Leftwich in the conversation. I hope they get an offensive guy. I mean, I know Todd Bowles deserves another chance because we know the Jets aren't great, but are the Jaguars really? I don't think he'll take the Are the Jaguars really that much better? I don't know. In terms of culture, I mean, I'll be
They
very interested their head coaching search, who they end up actually getting.
they also asked to interview both Kellen Moore and Dan Quinn, which I was a bit surprised about. I
Dan
don't think
Quinn, I
Dan
was
Quinn.
surprised because, like, really, like you saw they had talent in Atlanta, and it all just fell apart. So if you can't
I
do it with talent, can you do it with no talent?
I don't think Dan would take the job
Yeah,
just because I don't know. He looks like he's having a lot of fun first off in Dallas.
yeah.
And so then you go to Jacksonville where it's just blah. And also I have to imagine that he's aware enough to know that like if he fails in Jacksonville, like what are the chances he ever gets another head coaching
Be
job?
like
And
Romeo
it's
Crennel, or he's just
it's very
DC
likely that
forever.
he would fail there too. So I think he's smart enough to know that. But
You know,
Kellen Moore is an interesting one, but I also have not been super impressed by Kellen Moore this year. Cowboys red zone offense still sucks. I mean, people like love to talk about how great the Cowboys offense is, but our Achilles heel has actually been our red zone offense for 3 straight years under Kellen Moore. We are a bottom 10 team in red zone efficiency. But anyway, I like Byron Leftwich a lot there. I mean, he formerly played there. But I don't know, young offensive coordinator. He's done a great job in Tampa. I like the fit, but we'll see. I mean,
yeah.
how most coaching searches go, your first few candidates are never really the person you hire anyway.
Yeah, so we'll see. But over Kellen though, I'm not sure if you want your first gig to be in Jacksonville. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's
because
a balance there. Because
I'll
if
say this about Kellen too, which it kind of applies to Byron Leftwich as well. Kellen, his only offensive coaching job has been in Dallas, and that's with Dak, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, Zeke. His entire time there, Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, Lael Collins. He had Travis Frederick for a bit. Now he's got CeeDee Lamb. Like he's had a lot of weapons. So Kellen, I'd hope that you're smart enough to know like maybe we take somewhere that has more talent than just Trevor Lawrence and James Robinson.
yeah, maybe wait a little bit. So we'll see. But great win for the Jets. Something to build on for the next year, maybe. When maybe a win you can hang your hat on, maybe at least, because you haven't had many this season. But now we're going to a divisional matchup where Joe Burrow can definitely hang his hat because he had an amazing performance. Him and the Bengals beat the Ravens 41-21. He had 500 plus yards. Also, if you went up against him in fantasy, I feel sorry for you because he had an amazing day as well, both fantasy and IRL. Any thoughts in regards to here and his domination? And T. Higgins. T. Higgins had a great game too.
Um, I didn't expect Burrow to have 500 something yards, but like he was on the starts for a reason because he shredded the Ravens last time they played. And of course, he was going to do it again because this time they're without Marlon Humphrey and, Wink Martindale for some reason before the game decides to go out there and say, yeah, we're not going to double Jamar Chase because, we did it to Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams because they're future Hall of Famers, but let's not do that. Let's not declare that about Joe yet, which is true. Like, you don't want to rush anything, but like, don't give him bulletin board material right before the game when your secondary is decimated, like,
It's like
especially after last time he played.
was the last year, the year before, where Jim Schwartz went up to DK Metcalf and say like, "Oh, you're not anything like you're not going to be that
Yeah,
Calvin
like,
Johnson." Then DK
yeah,
dropped like 150 on them. Like, why would you say that right before
yeah,
kickoff? Like,
like what? Yeah, that's ridiculous. So yeah, unfortunately, I mean, it didn't matter anyway because I lost regardless, but I benched Joe Burrow for Dak in one of my leagues. Dak had an amazing week anyway, but there in that league, the scoring difference was it was double digits or something like that. So it definitely sucked that I did that. But great game for the Bengals, statement game. but they still got work to do because in the AFC North, you can't feel comfortable with any sort of lead, even with 2 games remaining. I don't know the Bengals' remaining schedule,
I'll pull it up.
but I'm pretty sure it's pretty difficult. Yeah, they play Kansas City and Cleveland. So if you lose to Kansas City, all of a sudden maybe that Cleveland game becomes an important one where you got to win to try and stave off the Ravens or something like that. Actually, I don't know. I don't know if they've clinched the title.
Ravens do also have a tough ending though. They play the Rams next week, and then they play the
Okay.
Steelers, that's always a tough out for them.
Okay. So, yeah, I don't know. Technically, the Steelers are still there. The Ravens are still there. So it could become, important. So you don't want them to if you're Zach Taylor, because you have a young team, you don't want to say, hey, don't get too excited. Like, let's still clinch this division, especially since we got a tough game against Kansas City. If Baltimore or Pittsburgh take care of business next week, then that's going to be tough for us, but still that's a really important win because that gives you the season sweep over Baltimore and an eventual tie. So a very important win. And that puts them in prime playoff position if they can handle their business.
Yeah, they're definitely a low key scary team just because of their offense, just how explosive they can be. We saw it this game. And also, just side note, I have no issue with what they did because, quote unquote, keep passing because Baltimore's in that to the deal. Baltimore can't complain. They ran up. Remember, they did the rushing thing against Denver earlier this year, so they
Yeah.
keep their streak alive. And Baltimore also ran up a score on them last year too. I don't know if you remember, they got beat down last year when they played each other at one point. I think it was like a 31 or 41 to 0. It was a pretty bad game. So it's your division rival. Like, you're not gonna go easy on them. And yeah, sure, they'll come back next year, but you worry about that next year if they bring it to you. But yeah, it was a great win for the Bengals. We're starting to see just the high how scary the receiving, just offense in general, not just the receiving core. Joe Mixon's had some success in recent games, and not just running the ball but receiving. I mean, he almost had 100 yards. Him and Tyler Boyd, they almost had four guys go over 100 yards, which is crazy. And T. Higgins almost had 200 alone. He only had one pass he didn't catch that he was targeted on. He was caught 12 of his 13 targets, which, by the way, hey, Green Bay, you could have had T. Higgins if we didn't draft Jordan Love. I'm just saying, just throwing it out there. Anyways, nonetheless, though, great win for the Bengals and for the Ravens. I mean, Tyler Huntley, he had COVID, right? He got COVID like a day or two, the night before, right, or that morning.
Yeah.
And John Johnson, the guy that been on so many different teams, stepped in, tried his best. Poor guy.
He played for the Giants earlier this year.
I always forget. I always feel like is he going to retire yet? And then he comes the next a season oh shoot, he's not retired. So I wonder him Josh McCown. I wonder what his jersey collection's like for his teams. Because I remember you saw that with I think you ever see that poster his daughter let her friends borrow some of his jerseys because he's had so many.
Yep.
That's hilarious. So I wonder if his kids are the same way. But anyways, so great one for the Bengals there. Going to another divisional matchup here where the Buffalo Bills, they took care of business against the New England Patriots 33-21. Josh Allen had another great game. Meanwhile, for the Patriots, the offense kind of off to a slow start for basically the second straight week. So, John, what were your thoughts on that?
I sort of figured that Buffalo and McDermott would really put a lot of effort into this game when it came to game planning and all this stuff, because the way that they lost the last time, the way the media responded to it because of Mac Jones only throwing 3 passes, it wasn't a bad loss by any means, but just the way that it happened almost became embarrassing for Buffalo. And so I figured that they would put a lot of emphasis into this one. I did not think they'd put up 33 points. But I mean, Josh Allen, I was thinking that Sean McDermott would come out with a crazy defensive game plan, but the thing that really surprised me was Josh Allen in this offense. It felt like they really took this game personal and said, no, we have to do better because our defense, even in that snow game, they held them to only 14 points. We just didn't get the job done. And sure, there was snow, there was wind, whatever, but you didn't hear any excuses out of those guys. They just came out, they handled their business in this game. And I don't who's in the division lead right now because of that.
I think
Because
the
they're
Bills
tied
are.
record. So yeah,
Yep.
now the Bills, they're top of the division. And if they handle their business, I'm gonna look at the remaining schedule. I don't think it's too difficult. Um, they have the Falcons and the Jets. So I mean, if they can just not choke these last two games, they should clinch the division. And I think that's a really important thing for them this year because last year it was sort of expected. Cam's the quarterback in New England, blah blah blah. But this year with Mac Jones being there, and then being able to like establish their system again, added new weapons and free agency, all that stuff. People started to talk again about maybe the Patriots' reign isn't over, and I think the Bills are going to feel real confident moving forward into the future if they can get 2 years in a row winning this division and put a stamp on it, saying, "No, we are the team to beat in the AFC East."
Yeah. I think this game, like you mentioned, able to ride Josh Allen a little bit more, and we saw even I had doubts. They had some creative plays with Isaiah McKenzie, who's kind of stepped up because Cole Beasley, and I think Gabriel Davis was also out too as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
So yeah, I thought the Bills' offense would struggle because those two guys, well, are solid starters for them, especially against the New England passing attack where they're going to need their route running and such. But yeah, Buffalo had some creative plays, and then on the other end, we're able to slow down New England, even though Damian Harris had a good game. Another game where I think this is familiarity, just playing your division rival. Kind of had a good idea of their passing concepts and just make Mac Jones a little uncomfortable in regards to the passing game. Had to hold the ball a little bit more, maybe make a go to a second, third read. I mean, he obviously threw 2 picks, under 50% completion percentage for all those people out there that love that. So yeah, it was tough sledding for them passing wise, and it's something that I think is definitely a concern going forward. They just don't have like Jacoby Myers, solid slot guy. Kendrick Bourne's like an okay second/third option, but you really don't want them. I think we're seeing they just don't have a number one receiver right now. Don't have really a reliable guy to say, okay, well, if it's one on one or anything, we can get this guy the ball and he might make a play or bail us out. No one really doing that right now, even in regards to running backs. I mean, Damian Harris is a solid running back, very good running back, but not like I would say a game breaker as of yet. So um, we'll see how far New England can get just managing games and relying on their defense. But we've seen the past few weeks they really haven't been able to do that because their defense, you can't always rely on your defense, especially in today's NFL, because it's just tough to do that with all the rules and such. So, great win for Buffalo, very key one. Like I said, I didn't think that they would pull it off, especially at Foxborough, but they did. So, go in for them. But now going to the Rams and Vikings, where the LA Rams beat the Minnesota Vikings 30-23. Even though Matt Stafford did not have a great game, I forgot he had how many picks did he throw? Sorry, I'm pulling it up. Threw
he
three
threw
picks.
3. Yeah.
Not a great game, but otherwise the offense kept rolling. John, what were your thoughts?
Uh, it's, I mean, it's tough because obviously they're so talented, but it does become concerning the sort of games that Stafford is capable of in this offense where he has so many turnovers because I mean, in the playoffs, when you start playing some really good teams, like you're playing Aaron Rodgers, you're playing Tom Brady, like you can't get away with that kind of stuff without the offense capitalizing on it. And the Rams have a great defense, but if you put them in so many bad positions, like it's just going to become tough against some of these other teams that, in the playoffs, things just get tighter, and offenses are going to execute more and defenses are going to play better. And so you just can't really have those sort of performances. So I guess it's nice for the Rams that you can get that out of the way early, but if I don't know, if I don't watch enough of the Rams to know if this is a coaching thing, if this is Stafford just seeing the field wrong, if this is them just not being, as good on offense as they should be. Like, I'm not entirely sure, but the fact that he threw 3 interceptions and they were still able to put up 30 points, it's a good sign. But against a Minnesota defense that is very well coached, but necessarily doesn't have as much talent as they had in previous years, I sort of similar to the way that Green Bay won their game. I wouldn't say that I necessarily feel super great about this win, um, just because I mean your offense, even though they put up a lot of points, just wasn't able to do what they should have been able to do against a team that just doesn't have a lot of talent
Yeah, and
defensively.
This was a Minnesota team too. The offense like couldn't take advantage of some of the opportunities, but they still were able to keep it close as well because of those turnovers. And then also don't forget. I mean, basically the difference was the punt return almost in the third quarter that the Rams got. So otherwise, it might have been a totally different ball game because before that it was 13-10. Minnesota had just scored a touchdown to start the second half, and Rams weren't really getting much going, but that helped get them going forward. But it's something I would expect Matthew Stafford to clean it up. But who knows? I mean, it's been an issue the past few weeks. But I do like that they've been a little more patient with the run game, even though they've lost some back. Sony Michel, 131 yards and a touchdown. Who would have thought that at this point in the season? And then Cooper Kupp still doing good stuff. I heard some people say, yes, he beat Kyle. He's putting up numbers similar to what Calvin did that year, but let's all remember he's not Calvin Johnson. He's a very good receiver, but he's not Calvin Johnson. It's a very good offensive scheme, and now he's got a very good quarterback to add to it. And obviously other receivers that you have to worry about. Now we're seeing Odell a little more involved. But yeah, I thought Stafford, because it's been an issue all season. I keep expecting him to clean it up, but I'm not sure if he's kind of also starting to hit the old age wall because some of these are like underthrown balls where he's just not putting enough on it. He has had that issue a few times this year, so we'll see what happens there. But a very critical win for the Rams. They stay at 11-4 for the Vikings. Maybe the nail in the coffin in their playoff hopes as they fall below 500 to 7-8. But now we go to your division where the Philadelphia Eagles, they took care of business against the Giants, 34-10. Very slow start. Both teams only scored 3 points in the first half, but Eagles found their way in the second half. Thoughts, John?
I mean, the Giants, they're sort of at a point where it feels like obviously the season's over. It feels like they've sort of lost any motivation to really play. You're on your, I think, third starting quarterback now with Jake Fromm, but then Mike Glennon came in and played too. So like I don't know. I thought the news would be coming down that they'd probably be doing a full reset, but reports are saying that they're going to probably keep Daniel Jones and Joe Judge next year. Obviously, that doesn't mean that they're committed to them long term, but they're at least keeping them for next season. I don't know how Giants fans feel about that, but I'm not a big believer in either guy.
I'm sure our resident fan is. We already know he doesn't want Joe Judge out, so I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
he would want a full rebuild, even though they've done like 3 since they've won the Super Bowl years ago.
And I don't know. I just feel like it's sort of an awkward timing too, because they're probably going to get rid of Dave Gettleman this offseason. I don't know if I've heard anything about if he's going to stay or not, or if they're leaning towards getting rid of him. But I feel like if you get rid of him and you get a full like new GM, like that's sort of the perfect time to just fully rebuild, is to let that guy bring in his coach, and let them start off with a great relationship, as opposed to having to have him work with the old regime, try to figure it out. And then if things don't work, that GM basically gets a free year of doing whatever. And, it doesn't really count because all the blame is going to be placed on Joe Judge and Daniel Jones anyway. So I just feel like it's awkward timing. Like if you're going to make a move, just clean house. But other than that, I mean, the Eagles, they took care of business when they needed to. I sort of thought at the beginning of the game this might be a repeat of the last time they played, because the Giants were able to hold strong the entire game. But the Eagles, they bounced back in the second half, like you said. They came back in a big way and they're able to win this game. And they didn't necessarily even have to do it on the ground. I mean, in their previous games that they've been winning a lot, they've been having crazy rushing totals. They only had 130 on the ground in this game. But they were able to win in other ways, whether it was Jalen Hurts through the air. They had the pick six. They had a variety of different ways that they're able to score in this one. So I think that bodes well for them, moving into the playoffs. I don't think they've locked into a spot yet, but they're looking like if they can handle business over the next 2 weeks, which they do play Dallas in the final week. But they play Washington next week. They very well could be a playoff team.
Yeah, I think too. Jalen Hurts only had to carry the ball twice, so that's although they came out to a slow start, they still had success in the run game. Although injury to Miles Sanders is concerning going forward because I think he's helped open up more explosiveness to their run game. I think he's easily their most explosive and probably their best overall back. So losing him hurts because then you have to, Jordan Howard. We know Jordan Howard's solid and good, but he's not amazing. And then Boston Scott's serviceable. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, just Philly's just a more talented team. It's kind of obvious. It started showing more in the second half. Giants, we'll see what they decide to do this time. Whether they have 2 first-round draft picks, so they have a lot of opportunities to do certain things, but we'll see if they capitalize on that. But yeah, I do agree though. Dave Gettleman, along with Joe Judge and them, and Joe Judge should also be on the hot seat as well. So we'll see if another rebuild is in store for the Giants. But now we go to Carolina, where the Panthers lost to the Bucks. Bucks win 32-6. Kind of went as expected. Sam Darnold did play in this game like we thought, or like Matt Rule said he would. Kind of didn't matter. But John, what were your thoughts?
I don't like the alternating quarterbacks thing. Like Darnold played a lot more than Cam did, but I don't know why you do both. Just pick one. But other than that, I mean, the game went sort of as expected. Tampa, they shut down the Carolina run game completely. I mean, Carolina's leading rusher is Cam Newton, which he had 5 carries for 42 yards. But other than that, and then Darnold had 1 carry for 11 yards. But your actual running backs combined for 14 total yards. So, I mean, that was expected. Not going to be able to get much on the ground game going. And then with Sam Darnold and Cam Newton as your quarterbacks, you don't feel too great about your passing attack. So, honestly, they did worse than expected. But on the other side, great game for Tampa. I mean, Ronald Jones, Keyshawn Vaughn, they're really the two that I think carried the workload in this one. And as well as Antonio Brown, who had a great bounce back game after the suspension.
Yeah, I mean, he hit right in the head. Just it's the same issue. Carolina just needs to figure out the quarterback situation. And I'm not usually one to say, a quarterback will solve all your problems, but for Carolina, with how talented their roster is, it may be that could easily flip the script for 2 or 3 different games. It's just their passing attack is just not a threat right now. It's not the receiver's fault. It may be a little bit of offensive coordinator problem, but I think we all can definitely confirm they're just lacking at the quarterback position right now in regards to a franchise guy, and it just doesn't help also that McCaffrey's out and has been out the past 2 years. So, yeah, like we mentioned before, I think we're both pro keep Matt Rule. It's only his second year, and this team's talented. This defense is pretty good. It's just the offense needs to be a little bit better. But hey, I mean, I think you have draft capital. I know I saw some place say, "Oh, they don't have that much draft capital." I think they only lose a second round pick for Sam Darnold, correct? So
Yeah.
you still have your first. That's still a pretty good spot, and you still have your third. Like those are 2 pretty good picks. Like this, and you could find they've been finding gems late in the draft too. They found a few guys like Jeremy Chin, to work out, and they found some good free agent pickups, and like Robbie Anderson a couple of years ago. So they've been smart, and they have some money. So we'll see what Carolina does going forward. But yeah, great win for the Bucks. That those guys and great job that those guys stepped up because they're gonna need it to finish off the season and get into maybe even in playoffs. Because although some of these guys like Fournette, I've been may come back in the playoffs. Who knows if they'll be 100%? Who knows if they'll be ready? Like if they have to play wild card weekend. So great for them that they get some contributors right away that they can that Brady, especially because it's Tom Brady and most veteran established quarterbacks, they want guys they can trust. And so important for them to build trust going forward. But now going to a couple upsets. First one, the Houston Texans, they beat the LA Chargers 41-29. It was quite the shocker. John, what were your thoughts on what the heck happened here?
Honestly, it was an utter defensive collapse from the Chargers. Like they just couldn't stop really anything. I mean, we know that their run defense isn't very good, but to allow Rex Burkhead to go off for 150 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns, like that's pretty inexcusable. And I know that I don't think Joey Bosa's there. Like you're missing some key guys, but still, once again, inexcusable. And then Davis Mills, the rookie quarterback, who most people I think would probably consider the worst starting quarterback like on any team this year, goes off for 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, 21 to 27. Like he had a great game. I mean, he played fantastically, and it's with some I don't want to say bad receivers, but like these are not names that jump off the page. Chris Conley, Brevin Jordan, Philip Dorsett, like Nico Collins, like these are not, premier receivers. That these aren't even number twos on pretty much any team. Like these are third or fourth options on most NFL teams. And they came out and they beat the Chargers defense. And obviously, I mean, you do put some blame on the offense, and Herbert, he threw 2 interceptions. The run game, although efficient, they didn't really run the ball that much. I mean, they had 21 carries, but 4 of those were Herbert. So, they could be a little more patient with the run. But the simple fact to me in this game is, number one, Keenan Allen didn't really get involved. Obviously, no Mike Williams in this one, so that's tough that you don't have him. But you'd love to see Herbert get his best receiver there when you don't have Mike Williams or Eckler. Even I don't know, the offensive coordinator drawing up plays to get Keenan Allen more involved. And then for your head coach, like you were touted as a defensive minded head coach, and you allowed the Texans to put up 41. You have to do better.
Yeah, and I can't fault some of that was really also their defense kind of put on behind the 8 ball due to turnovers. I mean, first one was Chargers are in kind of field goal range at the Houston 40, or throws a deep shot, gets picked off, and then Texans going a 94-yard touchdown drive, and that's 7 points. That's a 10-point swing right there. And then they fumble early in I think it was early in the fourth or late third, fumble pretty in Houston territory. Houston gets a field goal. And then the pick six was just so. Granted, yeah. Otherwise, though, they also had trouble stopping them when they didn't turn the ball over as well, which didn't help. And it's something I just, like I mentioned before, maybe you need a speedster receiver, just another game breaker on offense, but mainly on defense, they have to address that defensive line. And I know they've maybe need to address linebacker because Kenneth Murray Jr. I think we had high hopes for him. Hasn't really been an impact on the field. I had high hopes for Drew Tranquil. He looked like he'd be a solid guy in preseason. I know it's preseason, but didn't look so well either. Invested first round pick in Jerry Tillery a couple of years ago. He hasn't really popped as much as I thought he would too. And Joey Bosa is really the only bright spot. They let go of Melvin Ingram, so a lot of turnover. And then who knows how much longer Chris Harris Jr. can do it on his side. So they may need to replace him at some point. So got a lot of question marks for LA if they even make the playoffs. And then meanwhile for Houston, I think they're kind of showing that they have the right idea of how to beat teams on most days. It's just they lack talent. But this was a game where they had their opportunities, they took advantage of it, and that's the NFL as opposed to college, where maybe the more talented team gets away with a game like this. But NFL, these guys are too good and just too well coached, too well thought out, too disciplined, and we saw that here as Houston surprisingly put up 41 points. That was I think to me the more shocking than this next game, but. Great win for Houston.
And just for the record, I mean, the Chargers, they finished the year off with the Broncos and the Raiders, and the Broncos are 7-8. The Raiders are 8-7. Those are 2 teams that are fighting to steal your wild card spot. And I mean, you lost the Broncos earlier in the year. You beat the Raiders, but that was like right after all the Gruden stuff. You were at home during that game. This time it's going to be at LA. At Las Vegas. So I mean, they don't have an easy road by any means, and so losing a supposed to be a gimme game against the Texans, like that's a really bad loss. That if you miss the playoffs, like you have to point back to this game and say, like that was the one we should have taken advantage of.
Yeah. All right, so now we go to the next game, and just a little foresight or behind the scenes. I texted John. Was it Saturday or Friday, whatever? When I heard that Nick Foles was quarterback, I said, I'm changing my pick to Seattle. Should have kept my pick because the Bears come back and beat the Seahawks 25-24. I'll let you go first, but what were your thoughts on this game and just in general?
at the beginning of the year, like the talk of like Russell Wilson leaving and them needing to do a reset, I was kind of against it. Like, I feel like they still have talent on this team. I feel like they have the ability to potentially win because you have quarterback figured out. You have a good running back in Chris Carson. If he can ever stay healthy, though, that's a big if. You got two great receivers. Your tight end, Gerald Everett's solid. Like I felt like they had pieces. Bobby Wagner, Jordan Brooks is good. Jamal Adams, but it's just like honestly, they're such a top heavy roster. Like all those names I mentioned are great, and everybody else is just pretty poor. Like they don't have a good run game. You don't really like anything that their coaching staff does. I mean, their secondary isn't very good. Like their defensive line outside of Dunlap, like they don't really get much impact at all. And in a game against Chicago, who is using their third string quarterback, Nick Foles, who hasn't played in who knows how long, and in a snow game, he's able to come out and outperform Russell Wilson. Like it's, I mean, if Russell decides to leave or he wants out or they trade him, I'm starting to warm up to the idea, and it's honestly the whole time all I could really think about with this game while I was watching it was all that stuff, but also I mean they don't have their own first round draft pick, and I know that everybody's talking about that, but the Jamal Adams trade, as good as Jamal Adams is looking, like it looks so the trade looks so much worse because they've failed to draft any real talent over the last handful of years outside of like the occasional, like DK Metcalf basically. Like everything else has just been terrible. Like, I mean, I can't even remember some of their first round picks that they've taken over the last few years. Rashad Penny, like he's finally having a good, end of the season, but I mean, he's still not an impact player that you're, expecting a first round pick to be. Like Seattle, honestly, I don't know. I believe they still have the same GM, John Schneider, I think is his name.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like he's got to go. I haven't heard anybody talking about him, but I almost I feel bad for Russell. Like they have failed to surround him with talent outside of basically like DK, Tyler Lockett, and then a trade for Jamal Adams. But once again, when your roster is so stripped to the bare minimum, like how much impact can Jamal Adams make? How much impact can those receivers make when you don't have a great team and you don't have great coaching to go along with it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, that's another big thing that you mentioned. It's just coaching. It's just lack. Like there has to be better ways to get the ball to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and Seattle's in control most of this game. But once again, another thing about the NFL is you have to put teams away, and Seattle never really did put teams away. It's one of the things. It's it's a good and bad thing about Pete Carroll is just the love for let's run the ball and play good defense. Well, you keep teams kind of in the game, and you don't have a defense like you did in the old days that would be as consistent to get stops. And then missed a key field goal in the second half that ended up being very crucial because obviously they lost the game. Credit to Chicago for going for two, by the way, and actually working out. I mean, they said screw it, you know what I mean? But
Yeah,
yeah,
credit to Matt Nagy. I mean, he had a good game plan in
yeah,
this one.
screw it, yeah. But because I mean, look, statistically, their offense did not do great, but I didn't think good on him to know that let's just take our opportunity here. Offense has been spotty, but yeah, I agree. I think they need to move on GM, and I think you got to move on from Russell. Maybe some of these contracts, like they re-signed Dwayne Brown to a solid contract. I know Dwayne Brown's had a good career, making a little too much money for his age. You mentioned Jamal Adams, like yeah, he's getting paid a lot to do that, but not a lot of guys around him. Another failed draft pick, LJ Collier, for a couple of years ago was a D end. Haven't even seen him on the field. Jordan Brooks has been okay. They don't have near the corners they used to. I mean, there used to be that okay, well at least Seattle can make their late round picks work, but they really haven't done so in the past few years, and on top of missing their early picks as well. So, yeah, I think honestly might be best to trade Russell Wilson, get some assets, try to get a rebuild, and then maybe you can do so quick enough in time that you can keep these other guys like DK and Tyler Lockett whenever they're up for their extensions coming up soon, because otherwise, you may need to move. Otherwise, there may be a mass exodus in Seattle in a couple of years if you try to delay this. Because I just don't see how they can add any more talent unless they get really lucky in the draft. and that's really iffy. Yeah, it's another tough loss for Seattle, but eh, I mean that's what happens when you don't put teams away in the NFL. So great one.
Which, by
Good.
by the way, about Russell Wilson, he only has 2 years left on his contract. So really, the question becomes, over the next 2 years, can we build a team that can win? Based on their draft history, I don't think they can.
No, and they don't have the free agency money to do so. Really, I don't think so. Yeah, tough for that go around. But now we go to Kansas City, where the Chiefs took care of the Steelers, 36-10. Like I mentioned earlier, the game was pretty much over after the first half. Just you could see Big Ben was just back to rock bottom. Big Ben, it was just not good there. And but John, do you have any further thoughts in regards to Chiefs Steelers?
I mean, I believe it was Romo and Nance on the broadcast this one, and they were talking about this is probably Big Ben's last year, and it is what it is. And unfortunately for Big Ben, like even the thing that the Steelers have been able to, hold their hat on their defense, they haven't even been as good this year. They've had different injuries, guys in and out due to COVID. Like it's just been a tough year for the Steelers overall. It shocks me that they're somehow 7-7-1. I figured they'd be way worse. But this is really what it's come down to. They're just they got to start moving and looking towards the future, because they have a lot of young talent on this team that I think you want to start building around, with Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Minka Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt. Like, you have a lot of key guys that you can start to build this team around. But trying to keep Big Ben, it just puts you in a tough spot, because like he also makes a good amount of money. Like, this isn't, he's not on some cheap rookie deal that you get the cap flexibility to then try and like maneuver and make other key moves in other positions. And honestly, I mean, I feel like the Steelers, like, they still have enough talent, and Mike Tomlin, to me, is still a great coach. The fact that they're 7-7-1 shows that, but he's still a good enough coach that, I mean, if they like hit a quarterback out of the park when it comes to the draft, like they get their Justin Herbert, they could be a playoff team like pretty quickly if they can just find the quarterback spot. But the problem is that with Big Ben still there, he's unfortunately like hurting their attempts at moving towards the future. On the other side, great win for the Chiefs. I don't want to take anything away from them on that win. I mean, they did without Travis Kelce. I don't think Chris Jones was available for this one. I'm not sure on
Clyde
that.
Edwards-Helaire left to a collarbone injury as
Yeah, so
well.
like they had guys. Chris Jones did play, but they had guys who were not available. Tyreek Hill didn't even practice this week. Like there was reasons for them to not be able to take care of business, and they came out and they did. So great win for the Chiefs. For the Steelers, I mean, you're still in the playoff hunt, but it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I just have no confidence in them. I mean, that interception Big Ben threw was like, what was he? Kind of like the Baker. Like, what was he seeing? The guy was double covered, and he threw it to. He just laid it up for, like the flea flicker didn't really work. And anyways, yeah, honestly, like they could even. I wouldn't be shocked if they push their chips in the table. Maybe they go for an Aaron Rodgers, like the reports were, because they have two good receivers and Claypool and Deontay Johnson, a solid third one in James Washington, Najee Harris. On little lines like iffy, but you only get a few draft picks, or maybe you signed a solid lineman and two off a good deal. You can get that guy. It doesn't even have to be an Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. It could be a Matt Ryan for maybe a little bit less, or someone. Just yeah, Big Ben is just. It's kind of like watching Peyton Manning in the last year, where it's kind of just sad. I don't even be mean. It's just like you watch it, like this is not the Big Ben I watched 4 years ago. That was one of the best deep ball throwers, and he's just not that anymore. And yeah, it's one of those guys that I don't want to be mean, but maybe played a little bit too long than he should have. Shouldn't have hanged up the like they say, when you start thinking about retirement, you probably just should retire, because you already kind of have one foot out the door, and it's probably for a very good reason, especially at the quarterback position. So, yeah, I mean, and like you mentioned, for the Chiefs, showed they can win in different ways. They can win the low scoring games, and they can win games like this where offense can just take care of the ball. No turnovers in regards to no turnovers in regards to Kansas City, and then meanwhile Pittsburgh I mean, they had 3. That didn't help us also, but yeah, we were able to run the ball a little bit, and then even though they didn't have Tyreek Hill really do much or Travis Kelsey, if guys like Byron Pringle, McCole Hardman, Daryl Williams, they can continue to step up, even when the Kelsey and Hill are playing well, I think that'll be very key for the Chiefs offense going forward. Because other than that, when it's just Mahomes, Kelsey, and Hill, we've seen this year that teams have kind of figured that out and then taken those guys away. But those other guys get involved, creates obviously opportunities for everyone else. So going for the Chiefs, they're still alive. They're first place because they're the cockroach for a while that no one would squish, and now they're alive and well. So great win for the Chiefs. And I know my parents are watching. I'm not saying, don't be mad at me for calling the Chiefs cockroaches. It's just a metaphor. They're better than a cockroach. Anyways, now we go to that division where the Raiders, they beat the Broncos 17-13. Not the prettiest of games, but Raiders did what they had to do and win that game. Any thoughts, John?
I mean, great win for the Raiders. I was really impressed with their defense. Like the thing that the Broncos have been holding their hat on is the run game. And Javonte Williams, which I mean, I will say they only ran the ball 16 times, but Javonte Williams, 7 carries for only 12 yards. Melvin Gordon, 7 carries for -4 yards. Like their defense came up big time in this one. They held Denver to 13 points. I mean, the Raiders defense, they've kept them in a couple games the last month or so, and have really been the reason that they're winning. I mean, they had a very similar style of game against Cleveland last week. So solid win for the Raiders. It's keeping their hopes alive. They're 8-7. This was important for a wild card spot and the playoff race. For the Broncos, it was a tough game. You're without Teddy Bridgewater. Your run game couldn't get going at all. Your defense, they did pretty well. But other than that, like, what are you going to do? So good win for the Raiders, but I don't know. I don't know enough about the Broncos and Drew Lock to like really have an opinion on, what happened here, but just knowing Drew Lock, I sort of figured that maybe they'd air it out a little bit more. When it comes to like the deep ball and stuff like that, but maybe they just don't trust his decision making. I'm not sure. Regardless, they just didn't have a great game plan to come and win this game, considering the Raiders were able to just totally shut down the run game.
Yeah, and they won the turnover battle. Denver had 3 turnovers, but I think you had it right on the head. They just don't trust Drew Lock, and honestly, Drew hasn't done anything to gain their trust. And it's just unfortunate they can't get the run game going. Good on the Raiders, and we know how talented the receiving core is. So it's just, it's wild. It's not that wild, I mean, in retrospect, but at the beginning of the year, I would have been like, man, like Drew Lock, maybe he can get a second chance at Pittsburgh if I knew things would shake out this way. But I hate to say it, but I think he struggles being an NFL quarterback, making the right reads, a little too aggressive at times, and then just lose trust. And then on the other side, though, credit to the Raiders. Also, they were moved the ball better, and I think look at third down efficiencies. I think let me pull up. I think the Broncos were like 1 for 12. Raiders were 50% on the day, so also got into more third and manageables as well, as opposed to third and longs like the Broncos did. And just once again, Derek Carr, I know people crap on him because he's not amazing, but he's also not bad. I mean, he's got a niche. He's a solid quarterback, and they win games like these. And I mean, once again, another potential guy. If Las Vegas wants to move on, maybe do a complete strip and rebuild. If I'm Pittsburgh, I'm calling for Derek Carr because he could be we've seen that Derek Carr can play at a high level. Maybe
He's never had talent like Claypool, Deontay
yeah.
Johnson.
I mean, best he had was what Crabtree at the end of his career, right? I think that was Crabtree was solid for like a year, and then it all fell apart. And then I mean, we all saw that. But I mean, the best guy's been with Darren Waller, and they haven't had him for a couple of weeks due to his injury. So going for the Raiders, they stay in the hunt for Denver. I think to me, I'm not sure the rankings. I'll have to look at the standings, but I would say that probably the proverbial nail in the coffin. But obviously, they still have 2 weeks. Maybe they can pull something off, but the destiny is not in their own hands, I believe. So
And they play Kansas City in the final week,
Uh,
so that's
yeah, they can't
tough,
beat Kansas City. They just can't. It's just been their Achilles heel. The one team that
especially
can't get on the
since
revenge tour.
I'm gonna imagine that Kansas City probably hasn't like locked up the 1 seed by
Yeah,
that point, so there's not really a hope of them like resting starters.
yeah. Anyways, now we go to the Sunday nighter. Not much to say on this one, but I'll let you go as long as you want. The Cowboys, they beat the Washington football team 56-14. It was a beatdown. I mean, John, go ahead, just tell the people. And I really don't have anything to add.
This one felt good. It felt good to win. I'm not gonna lie. The fact that Washington, so obviously when we played them in their home stadium, we brought our benches because apparently, and it's colder there as an outdoor stadium, their benches were like broken or something. So they're away benches. So the Cowboys had to like buy their own and bring them. Well, Washington, I guess, got inspired by that and decided to bring their this week. They brought heated benches, custom made to an indoor stadium, and the Cowboys they braved the storm and just had normal benches that are not heated in their own stadium. So I don't know. It felt real petty for them to do that, and I was really hoping the Cowboys, after Amari Cooper's comments earlier in the week where he said, we're not looking very good. Like, we are not as explosive as we need to be, and this is incredibly disappointing in our offense. I was really hoping that the offense would respond and this wouldn't be another game, because Amari Cooper has he's been very upfront about how he loves playing in Dallas and all that stuff, and he's simply put a leader on this team. And so if you hear him say something like that, like, you just hope the offense comes out and performs, and they did. And so it was a really entertaining game to watch. The only sad part about it is that I needed the Cowboys to either go so insane with Dak and Zeke and CeeDee Lamb that I would win a few of my games, or not do very well and I would still win a few of my games. They hit like sort of in that middle point where like they went crazy and then they basically benched the starters for a quarter and a half, and that's what killed my fantasy playoff hopes in 3 leagues. Also, CeeDee Lamb just unfortunately was like the odd man out when it came to touchdowns. Like, even like Terrence Steele scored and CD wasn't able to get one.
Hey,
So
Michael Gallup didn't get one. So
yeah, Michael Gallup didn't get one, but also Michael Gallup isn't like necessarily crazy fantasy relevant. Like, he's still a great receiver in like real life, but for fantasy terms, I needed CD to get me one and he did not. But anyway, felt good to win, especially the way that, before we played them the first time, Washington fans were chanting, "We want Dallas," like nights before. And so then when we beat them last time, Ron Curse has this little video. I don't know if you saw it, but I loved it. It went pretty viral amongst like Cowboys fans, of him chanting back to the fans at the end of the game, "We want Dallas," in a mocking way. And then Washington comes out and pulls out the bench thing, and then we crush them even more. It felt good to win a divisional game like that. I know Mitch wasn't happy. He didn't talk to me about it.
yeah, it's one of those embarrassing losses, like real embarrassing losses. I don't have much else to add. I mean, defense was dominant. It's just everything that Dallas was just a great game for Dallas. Like everything that was going great. It's one of those where you watch back the film. It's like not really much to criticize. I mean, the game started off with what Diggs getting a pick for like first play. Like
So why would you start the game? I
they try.
don't
I
think it
think they
was
tried to
Terry McLaurin.
pull. I'm not sure. They tried to pull like the Andy. When you had Michael Vick and Deshaun Jackson. Like, oh, first play, we're gonna do play action. You're not gonna be expecting and take a shot deep. But you have Taylor Heineke and
It
not
was
Michael
intended for
Vick.
Terry McLaurin, but
Yeah,
still,
it was,
anyway.
and that's even worse. Like Terry McLaurin's like your only playmaker right now. And granted, De'Ami Brown had a very good catch later in the game, but still, De'Ami Brown's not established and hasn't done much this season to warrant like let's be aggressive on the first play and put that. Yeah, I don't want to be mean to Ron Rivera. He's gone through a lot, but and they've had injuries. But man, Washington, excluding Ron Rivera in the front office, excluding Ron Rivera mainly. I'm not sure about the rest of the front office. Just another kind of like Jacksonville, just a team, an organization that is a mess, especially in terms of off the field. If you're not following with all the stuff that's going on with them, just I mean, heck, your team doesn't even have a name yet. Like Anyways, yeah, and I really don't understand building the bench thing. Like, yeah, like you said, it's just I don't want to call it dumb, but it sounds just dumb. Like it just
It
didn't make
it
sense. Like you said, they brought heated benches to a indoor stadium and to a team that is more talented than they are, and they're not making them. It's not like Washington has anything to play for except for pride. So why would you further like double down on your pride? Like, oh, we're gonna bring our bench. Anyways, I said
it
I
was a
want.
purely petty move for attention because Dallas did it, which, once again, of
I didn't
course,
even know
Jerry
Dallas
Jones is
did
going to do something. Dallas did it, but Dallas did it because the Washington benches were broke. And of course, like you expect that out of Jerry Jones. Like he sees the opportunity, he's going to take it. But then the
Yeah.
media ran with it. It became a whole thing. So then you respond by doing the same thing, but unnecessarily. Like it's an indoor stadium. You don't need heated benches. So you're clearly doing it to be petty. Um, I don't know. It was a dumb move.
Anyways, so now we go. Let's just go on to the Monday nighter. Not much to say on this one. Dolphins beat the Saints 20-3. Saints, all they have is Ian Book. Poor guy. And that's all you really need to know. It was not Saints offense struggled for the most part of the game, as you would expect. Dolphins defense outscored the Saints offense alone on that pick six. So I really don't have much else to say. Once again, I feel like I have a Tua fan buzzing, but it's like yeah, Tua didn't have to do anything this game. He could have literally kneed the ball probably the whole game, and they would have won. But anyways, do you have any comments in regards to this game at all?
Um, I mean, yeah, Ian Book, you're on your fourth string quarterback. He's a
Had
rookie.
less than a week to probably prepare
Yeah,
because of all weeks to have to be on a short week to prepare, you don't want to be Christmas week because they probably you don't want to go home and stuff like that. But go ahead.
yeah, and also like it's due to COVID, so like you don't have your other quarterbacks there to really like even mentor you. Like if it's due to injury, like Taysom, Simeon, somebody could be there to sort of walk you through. Like, hey, I've played in the NFL before. I can give you some
Yeah.
insight.
Or like even just learning these plays, like, hey, this is what we like to do in this coverage on this play, and this is where you
Yeah,
should look.
and maybe they Zoom called them or something. I don't know, but like it's still just tougher as
Not the
opposed to like
same, yeah.
being there at practice, able to like talk with you, while it's happening. So I don't really say anything bad about Ian Book
Yeah.
because if it was a lose-lose situation for him, because say they pull off the win, the media would just be saying, oh my gosh, Sean Payton, offensive genius, he could put a game plan together for any quarterback. And then if they lose, oh my gosh, Ian Book, he's terrible. They lost because of him. So like I don't put anything on Ian Book. He did his best. I had zero expectations for him in this game. He's still young, still learning the NFL. Your top two tackles are out. You're playing an incredibly blitz happy Miami team. What are you going to do? You have no real good receiving talent out there either. So tough on that end. For the Dolphins, great job on the defense. They took care of business. First team in NFL history to lose 7 straight and then win 7 straight. Very impressive feat. I remember, a couple months ago, you and I were sitting here saying, wow, like I think I had him in the playoffs as one of my wildcard teams.
I think I
We were
was
talking about,
close.
wow, like it's pretty shocking how far Miami has fallen after a 10-win season last year, but great turnaround from them. And Brian Flores, you got to give him major props. On, for Tua. I don't know why, any Tua fans be out there buzzing about this win. I mean, he had
And Miami,
198 passing yards, a
also
touchdown,
Miami,
and an
just
interception.
Miami fans. That's just Miami. They always they just get hyped for. They're low key like the New York. They're like the poor man's New Yorks, where you know what I mean. They start getting
Yeah.
some hope and they hype all over it. But side note, I also had Miami and kind of got, I don't want to say lucky, but kind of had a lucky streak of just games. Like I'm gonna pull up their schedule here right now. I mean, obviously this game you get the Saints with basically their offense decimated because of COVID, and even some defensive players. You play the Jets, play the Giants, beat the Panthers. Now that they're a mess, also beat the Jets again, and then one win was over the Ravens, but I believe, and that was against Lamar. But that was a Thursday game too. Thursday games are weird, and they had a good game plan. And then after that, before that was they beat the Texans, and the last loss was to the Bills. So, and against better teams like the Bucks and Colts and the Bills got blown out. Like Bills beat them with a 35-0, but Colts beat them by a 10, and that was before the Colts really kind of started finding their way in terms of let's lean on Jonathan Taylor. The Bucks beat them 45-17, and then Bills beat them 26-11. So They do play Tennessee next week, but once again, Tennessee, I want to say, is like a heavy hitter, and then they play the Patriots. So I feel like those are at least better barometers in terms of complete teams and on both sides of the ball that could give them issues. But yeah, we'll see if Miami can make it to the playoffs. I mean, they do need to. I don't think they have their first round pick, so they got to try to make the most out of this season because there's no benefit to losing at all. Um,
Yep.